y'all for coming out today. I'd like to see a show of hands of our veterans that we have out here. I'd like to thank each and every one of you. We wouldn't have the freedom to be standing here and doing this today without y'all. Thank you. A lot of y'all know my name's Don Odom. You might have heard me at the Tax Day Tea Party, giving the politicians a piece of our mind. We're not here today to protest. We're here to pay tribute to our founding fathers and our veterans and to our God. And I just want to, sorry I have to read, I'm not a professional speaker. This is my second speech I've given, so y'all bear with me. I'm not running for office. I'm not an expert at anything. I'm just a blue-collar guy in my job. But I love this country, and I want to see it continue to thrive down the road. I'm also here to challenge you to remember the sacrifices of the founding fathers and our veterans, and I'll point out a few of those in a little bit. I'm here to encourage you to try to help make a difference. We're blessed to live in the greatest country this world has ever seen. You know, you hear a lot from some people about the mistakes our country's made, and we've made our share, you know, the way we treated the Native Americans and slavery, and, you know, others that we might all agree on, some that just according to your opinion. You know, we're all human, and our country is made up of humans, so we're going to make mistakes. But I'd like to point out a lot of the good this country's done. I'd like for you to weigh that good against the mistakes we've made. The tyrants that we've toppled, the countries that we've liberated over the course of decades, the disaster victims that we've saved over the years. And a lot of times, it's in countries that burn our flag and hang our president in effigy and cry death to America. But we go in there and we help them anyway. That's because that's the kind of people Americans are. I'd like for you to weigh the Christianity that we've helped spread around the world due to the religious freedom that we have here. Weigh the thousands, if not millions, of inventions that improve the lives of people around the world. We were able to accomplish that because of the freedoms that we have here. We can try to make a difference without having to go ask Big Brother if it's okay at this point. The standard of living of our poor rivals that of the middle class in other countries, if they even have a middle class. A lot of them don't. They're poor would be homeless here, and everybody else that works for the government is rich. Never in the history of the world have so many people lived so well in the same country at the same time. Y'all think about that for a minute. Weigh our place in the world. No matter what some people would have you believe, we are still the shining beacon of freedom and liberty for all of those who would be free. I think overall we got a pretty good country. What do y'all think? Now to our founding fathers. They were brilliant men. Some of them had, you know, extensive educational backgrounds even in those days. Some of them weren't armed with a college education. They were armed with passion, and others with common sense. Some of you will get that. Most were wealthy with a lot to lose. But you know what? They did what they knew was right, and they didn't turn back. You know about some of the founding fathers: Jefferson, Adams, Franklin, Washington. You know, I'm not going to go into the details of them. I'm going to tell you about a few of the guys that you might not have heard of, or maybe if you did get lucky and hear it in school, you've forgotten about them. Men like Francis Lewis, He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence from New York. His home and estate were completely destroyed. His wife was captured and brutalized, and after being freed in a prisoner exchange, she later died from the effects of her abuse. Remember John Hart. He was a signer from New Jersey. He slept in the caves and woods while being hunted by the British. Think about his wife as she lay on her deathbed listening to the enemy soldiers plundering their farm. When Hart was finally able to slip home under cover of darkness, he found his wife buried in the ground and his 13 children missing. He spent the rest of his life looking for his children. He died in 1779, a broken man, and he never found out what became of them. There's one more signer I'd like to recognize today, Abraham Clark. This man was truly a man. I want you to listen to what he did. His two sons were in the Revolutionary Army. They were captured and placed on a prisoner ship that the British had. 11,000 Americans died on that ship. Near the end of the war, this man was offered his sons' lives in exchange for turning his back on the revolution and offering his support to the king. He refused to do that, and by his refusal, he sentenced his sons to death. That's what you call commitment right there. Of the 56 who signed the Declaration, 9 died of their wounds or hardship during the war. 5 were captured and put in prison to be abused until the war's end. Several lost wives, sons, and entire families. All were subject to manhunts and were driven from their homes. 12 had their homes destroyed. 17 lost everything that they had in this world. All this, not one of them, not one out of 56 defected or went back on their word. Their sacrifice and dedication got this country started, and it's still intact today over 200 years later. We turn now to our veterans. They serve us knowing that their service could cause them to pay the ultimate sacrifice, their lives. Think about the men in Valley Forge. Freezing in the bitter cold, gloves, coats, and even shoes were luxuries that few had. The food supply was almost non-existent. When they weren't making warfare, they were huddled together trying to stay warm, wondering, am I going to die from the cold? Am I going to starve to death? Am I going to die from the sicknesses I'm getting from being in this weather and not having food? Many of them did. Many of them did in those conditions. They weren't killed by a bullet. They died because they volunteered and stayed right there in those conditions. I read a letter of a young soldier. He was 18 years old. And he said, I sit here cold, wondering where my next meal will come from. And think about the days at home when I had a warm meal and a warm bed. And yet, it's all worth it. Think about our brave men piling off the boats at Normandy. Some of them drowned or were shot on the boat before they could even make it ashore. Others made it ashore only to be taken down by the machine gun turrets. All the men behind them seen this, and they moved forward anyway. Think about our men who went to Vietnam.